Hello and welcome to another Mr. Marriott Maths video, and this time we're attempting question 7 of the October 2021 Edexcel Decision Maths paper. And figure 5 shows a partially completed activity network for a project that consists of 14 activities. And we're asked to complete the precedence table in the answer book for the 8 activities in figure 5. So I've included the activity table, the precedence table on the page. We're going to complete it now. Activity A doesn't have any immediately preceding activities before it. And the same can be said about B and C. Activity D is immediately preceded by activity A. You need to have done activity A in order to do activity D. And the same is true for E and F coming from the same event. Finally, we're moving on to G and H. And in order to do activity G, you need to have done activity B going into the event before G, and you need to have done activity F going into the event before G. So G has immediately preceding activities B and F, and finally H. And into H we have the activity C going into H, but we also have this dummy. If you ever have a dummy immediately preceding an activity, you check what if activities immediately precede that dummy. And what activities immediately precede this dummy are B and F. So you have B and F both going into H as well. So you've got B, C, and F if you include C. So how are these 2 marks distributed for this question? You've got 1 mark, so 1 independent accuracy mark for G or H, and the other independent accuracy mark for everything correct. Condoning the lack of a dash for A, B, and C, which are blank. So had you not drawn these lines in A, B, and C, that would have also been fine, but it is technically correct to draw the dashes to represent that they are, in fact, blank. The precedence table for the remaining 6 activities is given below. Complete the activity network in the answer book for a project. Your completed activity network must contain only the minimum number of dummies. So we've got some observations to make. We can see that E, G, and H all combine together, and if there is an immediately preceding activity E, then you'll automatically have G and H. That makes sense because E, G, and H are all combining into this one point. We also see that J and K both combine into a point, and K has immediately preceding activities E, G, and H. So we know that K is going to come from this point. So we're going to get a K out of this point. So when we consider I and J, which have immediately preceding activities D, E, G, and H, that means we need a dummy from E, G, and H up to D to allow us to draw I and J. So we've got a dummy up there. But we need J and K to essentially couple with each other. We need J to terminate at the same event as K does. So I'm going to draw J going to K, which means I'm going to draw I not heading in that direction. So finally we can add our final events L, M, and N. So if I try adding event L, I'm going to recognise that I need a dummy to go from JK, or the event immediately after JK, up to the event after I. But I also need a dummy for events M and N. I can't have 2 activities starting and terminating at the same event. And I think I'm going to reach a termination point, a sync node. So I'm going to add one of my activities. I think I'm going to add N, just to keep it contained into a nice graph. But I can't also have M going like that. So I need to introduce a dummy. And there's two different options for a dummy. I could either draw a dummy on the outside and then draw M coming in, or I could draw M going out and then a dummy going in. I think I'm going to draw M up here. Just personal preference, with a dummy going into M. And then finally, I need a dummy to connect up to I so I can draw in L. And it would be allowed for me to draw a dummy directly around here and then drawing L in. My diagram would be complete. I wouldn't have any nodes just starting at a new point that hasn't already been connected. But in fact, just to make my diagram look a bit nicer, went a tiny bit too far there with my erasing. To make my diagram look a bit nicer, I'm going to continue the dummy up here and then add in my L. And now, of course, there are many possible variations of this diagram. As I said, I could have drawn M and then a dummy going in and a dummy going around. I could have drawn M on the outside. So how to mark this question? So you'd have got one method mark, an M1, for at least 5 activities on your diagram, labelled on the arc with at least 2 dummies placed. You've got an accuracy mark for having activities I, J and K, and this first dummy dealt with correctly with arrows. You've got another accuracy mark for activities L, M and N with a second dummy with the arrows dealt with correctly. And then finally another accuracy mark for a correct solution only. So all arrows present for each activity with 1 finish and exactly 3 dummies. It isn't a unique solution, so it needs to be checked very carefully. So that's the 4 marks. So any additional dummies would only cause you to be penalised with this final accuracy mark because you were asked to use the minimum number of dummies. Okay, question C. Explain why activity D cannot be critical if all 14 activities have the same duration. So let's think about all the different paths that could go via D and all the paths that can't go via D. And thinking about this, if we're going via D, you only have 2 more activities until you reached the sync node, until you finish the activity. So all paths via D travel through 4 edges. So it would have 4 units of time because each activity has the same duration. You've got 4 times that duration to travel via D from the start to the end. However, there are some paths that have 5 activities. So there are some paths, and I'm going to give an example. A, F, G, K, N travel through 5 activities. Which implies that a critical path must contain at least 5 activities. So any path going through D, I can delay one of the activities by the duration of an activity and still complete the project on time. So D cannot be critical. So how would the marks have been awarded in this scenario? So stating a critical path must contain at least 5 activities is an independent accuracy mark. Concluding that all paths via D travel through 4 activities would have been an independent accuracy mark, with the conclusion that D cannot be critical. So until next time, thank you for watching and goodbye.